quote unquote border czar. Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People are going to have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her to work on kind of the root causes of immigration.
There has been so much criticism against Kamala Harris. You know, she was the border czar.
Calling her sort of the border czar, which wasn't necessarily the case.
So the border, if they weren't planning to address it in a major way, do not make her your border czar. She met with some of the Northern Triangle countries, but nothing has effectively changed.
All right, it's been a little while since I brought out a video and talked to all of you guys. First off, I want to say thanks to everyone who has subscribed, everyone who has left a like or even viewed my videos. I'm so grateful for that, especially the subscriptions and the likes, that interaction, and even the comments. I love having conversations with you guys in the comments, so keep it up. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do, because I focus mostly on politics from a little bit more conservative, right-leaning, hence the name Bitter Red Pill, but viewpoint, and those, I don't think those get nearly as much exposure as some other videos across YouTube. So if you're interested, if you enjoy this, if you find any entertainment value or anything informative, I'm going to ask you to subscribe, because you may not see me again. But anyways, thanks to those who have subscribed. And here I've got this this segment from The Hill Rising, and it's Jessica and Robbie, and I thought it was pretty good because it goes over a lot of the points with Kamala Harris. She has the interview coming up tonight with Dana Bash, which is going to be interesting to say the least. I don't expect much out of that. I think it's going to be softball questions. I don't think Dana Bash is going to push Kamala Harris at all. I was watching CNN earlier, and the anchors on there were talking about the important things that need to be discussed, and the only thing they talked about was the economy. They didn't bring up immigration, so I don't expect Dana Bash to bring up immigration, and I sure don't expect her to press her hard on immigration. I don't expect that she's going to press her hard on anything. But anyways, this is the video I got for you, and let's check it out.
Vice President Kamala Harris will give her first interview Thursday. It's been a point of contention that she's not given any interviews since she became the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. There's been a lot of navel-gazing from mainstream media as to who would score the first interview with Kamala. The winner is CNN's Dana Bash. Harris will not fly solo, however. Her running mate, Tim Walz, will be part of that interview, which
Okay, so she's going on CNN with Dana Bash. We're all aware of that by now. So when she goes on air with Dana Bash, we can't expect that there will be any tough questions or any pushback on her, because she is mostly a Democrat propagandist. Even in the Trump and Biden debate, which was fairly moderate, it was fairly balanced, and Jake Tapper certainly did a good job with that. She was a little, even still a little more lenient against Trump and towards Joe Biden in that. But what I don't get is, if they're trying to paint her as a tough, strong woman, why isn't she doing anything without Tim Walz? Which I called this early on. As soon as she had nominated him, I immediately said, yeah, she's going to be totally dependent on him to answer the tough questions. She's going to constantly refer to him and put his face out there. But this idea of putting two of them together, I think, is detrimental to the image of a strong woman, because this is essentially just showing that a woman can't do it alone. A woman needs to have a male with her, which is, I would think that women would take offense to that, but that's nevertheless, that's the image that they're portraying with this, in my opinion. In my opinion, they're showing that anytime a woman is in a position of authority or power, she needs a man to lean on, and that's what I see when they stick her with Tim Walz. They can't put her out on her own alone.
Prompted Fox News' Laura Ingraham to post on X, quote, "Pre-taped, live is just too risky. Joint interview. They're afraid of sending her out solo. CNN's Dana Bash will be doing the questioning. This keeps getting worse." And Fox News anchor Howard Kurtz posted, quote, "This puts so much pressure on this one sit-down, handing the Republicans a prime talking point, and doing more interviews would make each one less of a major dramatic event." It's a good point. CNN GOP pundit Scott Jennings posted, quote, "Weak sauce for Kamala Harris to demand an emotional support animal," I guess that's Tim Walz, "for her first interview, shows an extreme lack of confidence for Thursday night event on Sunday."
Right, that's what I was saying. If she's a tough and commanding woman, then why does she need an emotional support male to lean on?
CNN.
The sit-down comes over a month since she's entered the race. According to a report in Politico, reporter Eugene Daniels writes that prior to deciding, Harris's campaign had been shopping around for who would be doing the big interview. Per his report, campaign staff asked reporters input too. Intelligencer's Jonathan Chait does not believe one interview will be enough to wipe away the narrative that she's afraid of the big bad mainstream media. In his latest piece for New York Magazine,
Well, I don't think that's a narrative that's without legitimacy. She certainly seems to be. She won't take any questions. She may sometimes take a few quick questions on her way from one place to another, but it's been 6 weeks and she hasn't even sat down to answer a single question to the media. She won't respond to them. When Donald Trump wanted to set up debates, she didn't want to do them. She's now trying to back out of the one debate that she agreed to do.
he writes that instead of avoiding interviews, she should just do as many as possible. He writes, quote, "Getting Harris out into the news several times a week is actually a much safer strategy. If she gives a bad answer, there will be a news cycle about it, but she will be back in the news a day or two later talking about something else." I just think
I agree with that. I think it would have behooved her to get out and talk to the press constantly. And I'll tell you why. I have a pretty good reason why this is. The media has done a wonderful job of propping her up, of almost never portraying anything negative about her or weak, or they have really been fluffing her since Joe Biden nominated her. She's been held aloft by the media, which is why she hasn't felt the need to go in front of anyone or answer any questions, because why would she when they're carrying her? But what I see happening with that is when she does eventually, and she will have to get in front of the media, eventually people are going to have enough. I would think so, but who knows? I mean, she's going to have the diehard Democrat votes no matter what. The only ones that she needs to sway are the independents, and I'm sure quite a few of those are going to be swayed just because it's not Donald Trump. But I would think that people are going to demand, even on, again, not the staunch Democrats, but at least some left-leaning voters are going to want to know what are we voting for. And when she does have to come out and give her interviews and talk to the media and let the people know who she is, well, now the media has propped her up to this point and put her up on a pedestal. She's going to have to maintain that, and I don't think she can do it. I honestly don't think she'll be able to do it at this point. it's like they say, never meet your heroes, because you have an image and an idea of what your hero is, but then when you meet them, they might be a complete jerk, and it just completely blows your image of them away. So anyways, I think it was a bad idea for her to avoid interviews and press conferences and talking to people all of this time, because I think it's ultimately going to hurt her.
Think that the right in America would be saying, if Kamala Harris wasn't spending her time campaigning in swing states, why is she so obsessed with the mainstream media who loves her so much? It's so much easier than if she was out talking to regular people. They would spin whatever decision she made into a bad one with a different narrative. And I think they want as many interviews as possible because they want the viewership that is the same excitement that draws huge crowds for her. So I just find all of this terribly silly. I think it's just people in media who think this is a big deal. When I talk to my family who lives in a swing state, when I talk to my friends who are regular working class voters, they could not care less whether or not.
Well, Jessica's friends and families, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with this show, but her friends and family are likely all staunch Democrats. They're voting for her no matter what. They don't care what her policies are. They don't care what she stands for. They don't care what she believes. And they're going to vote for her no matter what. Just like, was it Tarantino? I don't know if you saw him on Bill Maher the other day. He just said, we need to win. He's like, I don't care. I'm voting for her no matter what. So I think when she says that her friends, her family, and the people that she hangs out with don't care, she's probably right. But that doesn't speak for everyone. That doesn't speak for all voters, because there are many voters who care, especially I would think the voters strictly in the middle or leaning just a little left or a little right. They want to know what they're voting for, and intelligent people should want to know what they're voting for. They should want to hear the policies. They should want to get to know the candidate that they're about to stick their vote for. But here's something that I have heard time and time again, even since Joe Biden, since the debate with Joe Biden, and it became pretty clear that he was cognitively declining, the media could no longer cover for him, was I heard multiple people say, well, but he has, staff that makes sure that he stays in line and whatever. Well, we're not voting for staff. We're not voting for a team of people. We should vote for a president, an executive, a single seated individual that would be capable of pulling the right staff and creating the right cabinet and the right administration. But I think it's ignorant, and I think it's stupid to say, well, somebody else will take care. It doesn't matter who we vote for. Somebody else will take care of the position. Somebody has it covered.
She sits down with a mainstream media figure, or with who?
I don't know, Jessica. I think this is kind of an exceptional situation because she did not actually have to run or campaign for the nomination. There were no debates. There was no primary process involving her. She was simply chosen to be the replacement candidate by Democratic elites and donors. And thus, I think, uniquely in this case, the American people might not feel like they actually know her, what her policies are. She is backtracked on a lot of them. She's flip-flopped on the border wall, some of her progressive environmental stances, whether she thinks there should...
Okay, so there's something I want to talk about, because we keep hearing this across all media. And if you caught Tom Cotton, I think it was on ABC the other day, he was being interviewed, and they all are repeating this. She has flip-flopped. She has reversed her stance or opinions on this, that, and the other thing. Well, we don't know. We really don't know. And I think Tom Cotton did a great job of pointing that out. If you caught that interview, if not, let me know and I'll bring it up. But he did a great job of pushing the point that we haven't heard anything from her. You may have heard from, random staff or anonymous campaign helper, aide, whatever, but we haven't heard anything from her. We haven't heard that she has reversed her stance because she's not talking. If she has talked, it's been during a campaign in a speech that was written by her campaign aides or campaign writers, and she hasn't been pressed on that, like asking things like, well, why have you made this change in your stance? What has happened that caused such a reversal in your views? And people should know that. I can't believe there are so many people that are okay with not getting that info, but whatever.
To be an electric vehicle mandate. That was something that our co-host Amber, I saw reported yesterday that she had originally supported a mandate that we all have to have electric vehicles by, I think, like 2040, and now she's just walked that back. She's changing her policies ostensibly, but she's not explaining it. She's not having to rationalize it because she's not ever in a position to get even polite scrutiny from a mainstream media that will no doubt be polite in their discussions with her because they like and support her and want her to win. Dana Bash did a good job in the Biden Trump debate, so fair enough. I think she'll be not insanely hostile by any stretch of the imagination to Kamala, but she might ask her some probing questions that force Kamala to think on her feet, and that is what Harris has struggled with in the past, ending up saying those kind of vague platitudes. She'll have Tim Walz next to her to be able to step in, give some of that fiery combativeness he's known for. I do think she should do a lot more interviews, and there would be less writing on each one if she was talking to the press a lot. No, it should not take the place of campaigning in the swing states. Obviously, that's more important. But this is a situation where we did not have the opportunity to have the usual scrutiny you have for the candidate, for the person who becomes the nominee for president. Because
right, and that's really unbelievable. I would have never imagined in America we would have allowed that happen, especially from the party who screams we're the party of democracy, we're protecting and rescuing and saving America from threats to democracy. There was no democratic method to the way she ended up where she is. It still just boggles my mind how that was even, how anybody was okay with that. Anybody at all, any American at all was okay with that.
The process was done entirely on the fly this year.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see it as big of a deal. I see her answering questions outside of her rallies. I think that they could have press outside of the rallies asking whatever tough questions they have for her. I just think doing a sit-down interview and the amount of attention this has had is unparalleled in media. What other president has received this amount of scrutiny demanding a long sit-down interview? I just think it's very silly and a bit ridiculous. And regular people.
You know what, Jessica? She wouldn't think it was silly if it were Donald Trump hiding. If you remember correctly, after the debate and the Democrats were in this somewhat of a small civil war of what to do, they couldn't figure out what to do after Joe Biden did so horribly in the debate. Donald Trump stayed silent. He went golfing, and I don't know if you all stay in touch with the news on X and things, but the left was losing their minds about that. They could not stand the idea that Trump was being quiet and not saying anything about that. So she can sit here and say, well, I think it's just silly and I don't, but that's crap, because they would be losing their freaking minds if it was Donald Trump who was just not talking, not saying anything, and letting the media just fluff him and prop him up, which they would never do that, which is why Donald Trump has to get out and talk and answer questions and do interviews and press conferences and all this stuff, because people need to see him, because the most of the media does the exact opposite with him. They tear him down. They wait for any small line that he says to kind of rip him apart about it and then make a joke about it or laugh about it or give faux outrage about it for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Isn't an
don't care
exceptional
about stuff like
circumstance,
this.
Jessica.
This is stuff
It is
media
unusual.
people and the elites in Washington care about, but I don't think it's something that regular voters care about. I mean, they're hearing her message, they're hearing her policies, and it just feels out of touch that this has become as big of a deal.
It's definitely something that regular voters should care about if they don't. And I think she's wrong about that. I think they do care about it. I saw this on CNN, on MSNBC. They keep repeating this line. So this is something that's come down from higher up in the Democrat Party, this line of, I don't think it's anything that voters actually care about. Now, when have voters not cared about debates, about learning to know who the candidate is, about watching them get out and do more than just scripted campaign events? That's never been a thing that voters didn't care about. That didn't care if they come out and answered questions, did sit downs, did interviews, did night shows. The Democrats have long, been strong on doing the late night TV interviews and things like that. They've always been pretty big on making sure they do those, but she's not doing that. And I am certain that without the press, without the way that press is lifting her and holding her in the air, she wouldn't be where she is now. And the numbers in the polls, nobody would be wanting to vote for her, I'm certain.
As it is, especially when you have so many interviews happening with her on the tarmac, outside of her rallies, that get next to no coverage. Why? Because they're inconvenient for this narrative that she never talks to the media, which they're pushing as a ploy to get her to come on their show more often because they want the views. They want to make money during an election cycle. And it's just not as necessary as they're making it out to be. But here we go. She's sitting down with Dana Bash, who did a great job during the debate between Trump and Biden most recently. I think she's a fine pick for the job for that reason. And Walz coming, I don't think is a big deal. People need to get to know Walz too. He's done a lot of sit-down interviews at times when she's been busy, because let's also remember she's serving as vice president. So
and this is exactly what I'm talking about with the media. And I know you all have seen that. I know you're all aware of it, that they're doing it. She hasn't said one time. She's been the whole time, well, it's no big deal that she's not coming out and interviewing. It's no big deal that she is bringing Tim Walz on her first interview. I think it's a good thing. This is how the media does this. Now, if the role was reversed and this was Donald Trump, can you imagine them saying, well, I think it's a good idea that he's bringing J.D. Vance on to do the speaking for him. I think it's I think it's just fine that he's not out answering questions, that he hasn't taken any interviews, hasn't given any press conference. There's no way in hell they would do that.
The two of them showing up together is so they can get to know the ticket. This idea that it's emotional support is silly.
If she's too busy because she's doing the work of being vice president, that's fine. That's interesting. I would like to know what that work entails.
Right.
I think it's thus fair to consider her part of the Biden-Harris administration. I know you got on me for that the other day. I had to laugh, by the way, at this Politico headline from yesterday that was, Vance tries to tether Harris to Biden during Michigan rally. Tries to tether Harris to Biden. She works for him. She's in the administration with him. If she doesn't co-sign the policies of the last 4 years, then she should explain where she differs. But she is part of the team who's responsible for implementing these policies.
You can't not tie her to it. She's been a huge part of the administration the whole time, the Biden administration. I think the other day I read, 53 bills in Congress she broke the tie for. That number could be wrong. I could have heard wrong. I could be remembering wrong. But I think it was 53 bills she has made the deciding vote on. So she has definitely been involved in the Biden administration and every single action that's taken place. And now she was taking credit for that when she thought Joe Biden was doing great and people loved him, and it was the plan to prop him up in the media. She took credit for all of that. She said, yes, I was there. I was doing that when the Afghanistan withdrawal. She had an interview with, I think it was Dana Bash, and Dana Bash was like, were you the last one in the room when that decision was made, and she said yes, and Dana Bash was like, are you okay with that? And she's like, yes. So essentially saying, yeah, I was the last one to make the final decision and I'm good with it. So she was definitely, totally, and wholly every part of every decision the Biden-Harris administration has made. She's trying to back out of that. She wants to separate herself from it, but that's all crap. She has done every bit of it right in lockstep with Joe.
Was tangentially in charge of aspects, she was put philosophically in charge of aspects of the border policy, which is the single most unpopular aspect of the entire administration.
Another one that I think she was put in charge of was the Russian invasion thing. It was her. She was charged with doing what it took to keep Russia from moving into Ukraine, and we see how that worked. She's been a disaster. She's been a complete disaster as a vice president, and that's why she wants to separate herself from this past 4 years, because she did a horrible freaking job.
That was her purview. So it's just, I feel like I'm being gaslit by a media trying to pretend, oh, she has nothing to, she's the change candidate. She has nothing to do with the administration. She's part of it. She's part of the administration. And some of these questions could be ironed out if she faced hostile scrutiny from the media. So no, I don't agree. I think this is an exceptional situation where she has been suddenly thrust into the position of being the presidential candidate without any of the normal scrutiny you get by doing this process. And she should do more interviews, not just what she should do with CNN, Fox, and MSNBC.
Yeah.
And Rising, by the way, make a little pitch for our show, or News Nation, The Hill, etc. She should make herself available. Yes, they want to make money and they want their ratings, and that's their motivation. Fine, but this is a situation where this is an unprecedented situation, and I think it is totally fine. To the extent the media is even criticizing her for not talking to them, there's not that much of that going on.
Right.
Mostly they're just giving her favorable coverage. They're making or pretending that she has
Constantly
nothing to do with the Biden administration, even though, again, she's part of it. I think that's led her to conclude, well, why would I bother talking to them? They're so in my corner.
That's exactly right. She doesn't have to. I saw Stephen A. Smith the other day. He was kind of bashing her for not coming on and answering questions, but the very first thing he says was, I'm going to vote for you. Now, I'm going to vote for you no matter what. Well, then why would she come out? What influence are you on her to come out and answer questions if you're already saying right up front, well, I'm voting for you no matter what? And that's what it completely nullifies any motivation that she would have for coming out to answer anything.
Boost me without me even having to work for it. I think that's been the strategy thus far, although that is going to change if she totally ices them out.
I think J.D. Vance's predecessor would have a lot to say about the relationship between a vice president and a president, because Mike Pence and Donald Trump have everything in common, right? Especially the major stuff, especially the stuff about elections, considering he was his running mate. I think the Republicans know more than anybody in American politics that there is a difference between a vice president and a president.
There is, but again, they can't make that same correlation between Mike Pence and Donald Trump, because we have two completely different situations there, because Donald Trump is a leader and he is a forceful out in front leader, and he doesn't really falter to anyone else's thoughts. So that's a different type of leadership from Joe Biden, for one. But for two, like I said before, she was the tie-breaking vote in the House on multiple bills. She was the one who decided, and she certainly didn't, being the vice president, she certainly didn't decide against Joe Biden in any of those. She was siding with what the Biden administration wanted in all of those. So that's a huge difference between her and Joe and Trump and Pence.
They can view the country differently. They can even view the Constitution very differently, and elections where their name is on the ticket very differently. So yes, they're trying to make Harris own every single one of Biden's decisions, when, let's be honest, every single one of the president's decisions are not ones that the vice president endorses.
That may be true, but she does own a lot of those, like I said, because she was the tie-breaking vote in the House on many decisions, and she's the one who decided how it was going to go, and whether the bill was going to pass or not. And she sided with the Biden administration every time. So she had a much bigger role to play as vice president than Mike Pence did. And I'm not sure what really Mike Pence, how much influence he would have had on Donald Trump, but I'm even sure there was, some consideration in even that administration. But anyway, that's all I got for you. It was a little bit long, but I like this, The Hill Rising. This show's pretty good, except Jessica. She is so annoying. She's just so condescending. But Robbie's okay. I like Amber. If you haven't watched that, go check it out. It's a pretty good mix of liberal, kind of libertarian, and conservative views on there. It's not news. It's mostly just commentary and debate the whole time, but it's entertaining for sure. So anyway, that's all I got. If you got anything out of this, or if you enjoyed the entertainment, leave a like, and I'd appreciate it if you subscribe. Later.